Previous guest writes the first question. I'll let you read it and share the mystery to both of us.
All right. Tell me about an experience that had a significant impact on your life. That's a pretty good one. I would say my son being born, which is not the experience. It was him being diagnosed with autism. 16 months old, diagnosed severely autistic, told us that he'd never be able to talk. And then to begin helping a child grow and having to approach it in a way that doesn't make sense to me, because this is a new thing, autism. The brain synapses are firing in different ways. And so I would say I know I wouldn't be who I am today without having a son, without him having autism, but learning to share that same compassion towards everyone in the world, right? We don't all have a diagnosis of autism. We don't always walk with a diagnosis of depression, anxiety, PTSD. And so when people act the way they do as life's us, it's easy to be reactive to that, to be caught up in their emotions. And my son and his diagnosis have helped me so much to realize we're all going through something, right? We're all of our brains are firing differently. And one of the biggest examples of that is when you read a book, right? There's book clubs dedicated to everybody talking about what it meant to them, what their takeaway was. But it's black and white letters. Nothing changed. It's the exact same thing for everybody. So how does everybody get a different? And it's the brain and it's synapse. And so I would say, the biggest experience that had the most significant impact was my son helping me learn compassion for everyone in a way that I don't know that I ever would have got to.
Prior to experiencing it with your son, had you ever firsthand experienced autism?
Not really. I had some friends who had autistic children. One friend in particular who had a child still older than my son. I think he was 13. Who was severely autistic, couldn't talk, can't go to the bathroom by himself. And so that was, when I got the diagnosis, that was my first image of, this is what I'm in store for. I just knew nothing. And I've learned now, I feel like it's a superpower. All of our minds work in a beautiful, unique way. And it's really should be on us figuring out how to work within people and their strengths and weaknesses. But yeah, no, it was kind of my first.
The sad component of all of us is until we directly touch something, whatever it is, cancer, autism, like you said, we're so easy to, in a weird way, judge, in a weird way, like you explained, react. Because we don't take the time to pause and try to put ourselves in their shoes and how they're experiencing life.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, I'm not anywhere trying to compare, but I have triplets and they were all born premature. Awesome. So I've got the firsthand experience of very, very premature children and seeing that process in the hospital. And all of those things that we are benefited by change our lives 100%. And truly, I think, make us better.
Yeah.
It's sad that we would have to experience what somebody might deem as a negative to become better.
Yeah.
We're going to get into this, the surfing aspect. Okay. Is your son taken to the water? Does he like it?
Loves the water. Still terrified of surfing. It's a big beast out there, and the major piece of his autism that has held throughout all the therapy is his sensory sensitivity. And with that sensory sensitivity comes a feeling like if we feel like we're going to fall, we just catch our balance. He has an overwhelming response to that fear of falling or going underwater or, being held down. And so I've had him surfing since he was 3 years old. He's 11 now. And it was a beautiful dance that we had to learn between, okay, my son is autistic and carries all these fears and worry and his brain's overstimulated, and being a father saying, okay, where do I push and where do I not push? And we lived in Oahu, from he was 3 to about 8. And it ended up being, where I could only take him once or twice a year because the fear of going back was so great that he would have nightmares. But when we got to the beach and he would catch a wave, he would love it. He would stand up. I've got it on video. It went on Sports Center. Some like 4.5 million people saw it. He stood up on for Father's Day, looked at the GoPro, and he's like, "This is for you, Dad. This is for you." Woo! Like, didn't make any sense where the fear aspect was coming from. And he would even get off that wave and be like, "I love this. I want to do it every day." And then I'd ask him the next day, "You want to go surf?" No. And he would even get sick. There was times we would be walking out to the beach in Kailua and he would throw up just from the fear. There's no waves. I never took him in anything big, 1 to 2 foot, little bitty rollers, and it didn't matter. He was just overwhelmed with fear. So where he's at today is he just went out. He surfed for Father's Day. That's kind of the tradition. I don't think he'd been out for a year before that. And because in the dance where I'm at is starting to realize he's not my mini-me. He's his own version of, a human having this human experience. I am his guardian, right? I am here to facilitate him through his own path and his own journey, which meant that I had to swallow the hard pill when I said, if you don't want to go surfing, I will respect that. And he's like, "Well, I don't want to go surfing." So fast. Well, thanks, Dad.
Come on, think about it. Just
out.
A little.
I'm out. Yeah. So I still got him to surf for Father's Day. But yeah, so now that's where I'm at, is really trying to take a huge step back of the person I was. That was, you've got to do everything I did, because all the things that I did led me to where I got and helped me become who I was, and da 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 da. When I think of surfing, I really don't care about surfing as the wave riding aspect. When I think of surfing, I think of all the things that it builds in character, the resilience, the persistence, of getting knocked down, beat up, held back by waves. The ocean its job is to keep you on shore, and to be persistent and resilient enough to push through that, to get out to where you can actually catch a good wave, takes a lot. And then once you get out there, the scan, situational awareness, you're always on the alert, you're seeing where people are moving, you're adjusting yourself, so your SA is high, digging deep, paddling hard when you've got nothing left because the wave's here, seizing the opportunity. I mean, the amount of life skills that I think come from surfing is why I pushed it so hard. Now, I learned I need to find a way to get those points across and to help him with all those characteristics in anything he does. And so now we're having fun, and we read more books and play more Legos, and he wants to get into karate and Boy Scouts. And so we're expanding the horizons, and, my whole life is changing because my whole life was surfing. Ever since, as far back as I can remember, I was boogie boarding hurricanes in South Florida at like 8 years old. So the beach and the ocean was my classroom forever and always. And I just assumed that had to be his. And that's where all his lessons would come from. But, we're adjusting, we're moving on and transitioning right on time.
Before I take you down the path of your childhood, sounds like Florida's where you're from. I just want to comment, though, that's been the biggest lesson for me in life is realizing as a parent, all your job is just to be the safety bumpers way out wide. Let them pick the lane that they want to go down in life.
That's it.
And the more you try to push them into your old lane or your lane, it just causes more problems than anything.
Yeah.
The whole point of watching them and facilitating them growing up is giving them the freedom to make their own choices. And just like I said, be the bumper to prevent them from making a decision where they're going to physically harm or hurt themselves.
Yeah. One of my bosses taught me this a long time ago. Someone who you're giving information to will be so much more receptive if they asked for it, right? And so, that kind of got me to another idea of being a lighthouse. If all you do is work on yourself, you take care of everything you got to do, you do whatever it is that you do, and you just shine bright and everything, right? Then other people, maybe other ships, maybe they know exactly where they are. They know exactly the course they go in. They look over and they see your light and they wave, no big deal. Or they're totally lost and they're like, I could probably pull over there for a minute and see what this light's got. Maybe there's some good information over here. But then and only then really do I feel like people are receptive. And so, just being a good person, being a good man and an example for him, keeping my composure, leading by example, and, doing all the activities that I do, something will call to him or it won't, and that's totally fine.
So you've already alluded to it.
Okay.
Is Florida home base? Is that where you grew up?
Ish. So I was born in Indianapolis. My mother had me when she was 17, super young, and moved away to South Florida. Kind of, you guys can't tell me what to do. I'm doing my own thing. So she moved to South Florida when I was 3. Then we went back to Indiana when I was 5, back to South Florida when I was 8, back to Indiana until I was 13, and then Florida until I joined the military at 18. So very back and forth, and never in the same place. When we would come to Florida, it would be one coast, Indiana, one town, different coast, different town. Moved around a lot, which I think was perfect for my transition through the military. I was ready.
I'm used to packing bags and moving
all the time. Yeah.
What was her draw to Florida of all states?
Florida, being Florida, and my mom being wild at the time. She had a friend. They were following bands and, partying at night, and she was young. She was being 17 through whatever. She was figuring it out until my brother was born 8 years later. And I think that's when
time to slow down.
She slowed down.
And the draw back to Indiana, but to different places. So not going back for family?
It was. So, if I would say she basically ran away, but on her, officially I was allowed, she could do whatever. And then when things would fail, boyfriend, I don't even know if she had boyfriends, money would run out, she'd go home.
What kind of work did she do?
At the time, she was a nurse, or going to school, doing like home health care, nurse's aid stuff. She, after my brother was born, put herself back through school, graduated summa cum laude, nurse practitioner. And it couldn't have been 6 months after she got her degree, she got diagnosed with adenoid cystic carcinoma, which is one of the rarest forms of cancer. They have very little information about it. And the only thing we got told was 89% chance you'll live 5 more years, 50% chance you'll live 10, 15% chance you'll live 15. And it was a pretty rough road. because she was doing really well, but when she got sick, my brother was young. So next thing you know, she's bedridden. He's watching his mom go through, you know, I don't even know how to explain it. She just didn't do anything.
Are you already out into the Navy at this point?
I left for the Navy, 2001. My mom got diagnosed. The years just go blowing by. She passed almost 7-8 years ago, and she battled it for 8 years. So 16-ish years ago is when she got diagnosed. And yeah, with that diagnosis came my brother turning to addiction. And so then that was my whole time in the Navy, was phone calls of my brother and his addiction, and heroin dealers chasing him with knives, barricading himself in buildings, threatening to kill himself to my mom if she didn't give him her, because how he became a drug addict was taking her meds. And he was taking her meds so much that the doctors wouldn't even refill it anymore. And so with not refilling her meds, and now the level of medication she was on, fentanyl, patches, like heavy dose pain management. And so when she would run out of meds in the beginning of the month, the doctors wouldn't give her anymore. She turned to my brother and is like, well, you've made this problem, you fix it. And so he went and got her heroin, which she overdosed on. And that was kind of the end of that story there.
Sorry to hear about that.
Yeah, no,
it's got to be hard for you, especially being deployed, being away from home, and not really, in a weird way, kind of feeling helpless. Like there's nothing I can do.
Completely, and then with the helplessness, a lot of ownership over the years too, of like, it wouldn't have, if I didn't join the military, if I was home, I could have stopped it. I could have. And, after my mom passed, I held that same feeling, that I could fix it. I can do better. I can, now that she's gone, the toxic relationship between my mom and brother, which they were just feeding each other in sickness, now that she's gone, she's not in pain anymore. She's at peace. I feel good about that. Now my brother doesn't have to look at her and use that as his excuse of why he's using. And so I took him in, sent him to a year-long rehab up in Los Angeles. He moved out to Hawaii for my final tour afterwards. And then met a girl, had a baby. Life was going great. Was working landscaping job and a restaurant job. Fell on his landscape job, shattered his hand. They put him on painkillers, and the addiction started back up. Into the relationship, lost his kid, ended up losing his mind. Now he's in jail. But it's actually a really beautiful story, the full piece of it, when it all comes together, because everything's perfect. Everything has to happen. And now in jail, he's clearing the cobwebs and starting to see life and a different path. And he's not in jail because he did anything wrong, just for the point to be made. He was losing his mind, looking for his vehicle in a garage, pushing the alarm button, couldn't find it, saw a door, tried to open it, it wouldn't open. He tried to kick it. Apparently whoever owned the community garage was watching on a camera with his son. They thought he was trying to break in, so they called the cops. So he went to jail for breaking and entering when it had nothing to do with what he was doing.
Is he in jail in Hawaii or here back here?
In Hawaii. Yeah, which is apparently an impressive system.
Taking it back to you, with all the bouncing around and your time growing up, one, did you ever feel like you were, I'll use the word settled, or belonged anywhere? And of all of the time bouncing around, where'd you like the best?
The first answer is it made me who I was and am, which was very easy to talk to people, very comfortable getting to know people quickly and making friends with everyone. And so honestly, I really loved it. Everywhere I went, I was the new kid, and especially going from South Florida to Indiana, now I'm a bleach blonde, tan surfer kid showing up to cornfield Indiana schools. I had my choice. And so, yeah, it was great. I did. I loved. I do reflect that it has its downside, the moving so much. It was great for character building, being able to talk and get along and just get in where you fit in. But all my friends in the service who had one place, it's like when they got out, they knew exactly where they were going. They knew they'd been staying in touch with all the friends that they grew up with and went to high school with and went to college with. Whereas I don't have that at all. I've got onesie twosies, that I've maintained over the year. One from Indiana, maybe one or two from Florida,
Sponsorship for this podcast comes from Brothers in Arms USA. They're a veteran-owned and operated clothing and accessories brand that's 100% American-made. Every piece tells a story of brotherhood, respect, discipline, and honor. Deeply inspired by those who serve, those who have served, and those who have paid the ultimate price serving our great country. Whether you're an outdoor enthusiast, a proud patriot, or simply somebody who values high-quality American craftsmanship, they've got something for you. Go check out brothersinarms.com, spelled out fully, brothersandarms.com, and use the promo code TRANSITION20 to get 20% off your purchase.
And when it was time for me to retire, I had no idea. I didn't have a group of friends somewhere to go. My mom had passed. My brother was doing his own thing. So where to go was, and that kind of stunk for a minute, but it's also awesome and freeing and liberating at the same time to not have any ties to anything. But
it in a weird way or unique way, it's all about the perspective that you put on it. Mm-hmm. The very common story that you're going to hear, if I was to ask the same question to somebody as a young kid bouncing around all that, I think I would be willing to bet that 9 out of 10 are going to say, oh, it was horrible. I was always the new guy. I was always the fish out of water. And it was cool to kind of hear you say that I almost embraced it. Yeah. It was always, if I'm understanding correctly, it almost sounds like you took each time you moved as a chance to almost reinvent yourself. Mm. And having the maturity, take that back. Did you have the maturity at the time to recognize that you were reinventing yourself every time as in a positive way, or did you kind of struggle with it?
I don't think there's any thought to it whatsoever. Obviously, we're trying to remember childhood.
Correct.
But I don't feel like, I feel like it was the military, right? Where it's just like, hey, in fact, the military was worse because, we're older and really build some foundational friendships and relationships and you get comfortable at work. And, but I always just I feel like reflecting back, it was just like, cool, where are we going next? And then, awesome, this is my new school. Hi, these are my new friends. And it just goes from there. And, I've noticed that with my son as well. He still does have some social, issues. But even with those, when he shows up to a new school, they're like, wow, whoa, yeah. And he comes home, everybody thinks I'm awesome. I'm the new kid. They think I'm so funny and this and that. So, yeah, I don't think I ever really thought about it. It was just, and I would say that I've always been a go with the flow person. Anyone who knows me, that's how I operate. I like to just make the most of everything wherever you go. And perspective is everything. And, we kind of touched on some stuff about perspective in the beginning, but perception is reality. The things you see will never change, but the way you see them can, and that will completely change how we function in every aspect of our life. So, yeah.
Do you have any constants in your life growing up in all those moves of other adults than your mom, like grandparents, aunts, uncles, anything like that?
I would say yes and no. Because my mom was so young, I did do a lot of visiting with family. My grandparents, I would say very large family. My grandfather, who just passed this year, 93, had 5 different, it might have been 6 wives.
Oh, wow.
Yep. Lots of kids. So, big family, all up in Indiana. And, between, Uncle Trevor and Doug, I feel like they were very involved, but depending on where I was living, right? So people moved. My uncle moved down to Florida as well. My aunt moved down to Florida as well. And so we would be around them all the time and then come back to grandparents. I would spend summers with grandparents, and yeah, I owe a significant amount of character, personality, educational to my grandparents, holding it down as grown-ups while my mom was figuring out how to become one, for sure.
Being a kid who was already a go-with-the-flow type person, how were you in general? Were you a good kid? Were you squared away in school? The chuckle says no.
I was
a handful?
Oh, boy. Yeah. But it was mixed bag. Because to everyone's face, I was an angel. I was a salesman. I could, sell ice to an Eskimo. I can convince anybody of anything. I was so sweet and polite.
Until you weren't.
But nobody saw it and nobody knew it, for the most part. There were a couple things I got caught with as a very young kid, like maybe 5 years old, hitting rocks with tennis rackets into cars. Peeing in rafts that were out on a patio, lighting matches in the house. Little stuff, but I was a handful. A lot of energy, very difficult to keep up with and to keep me actively engaged. And it translated as I got older. Before I joined the military, got a little bit of freedom and really ran with it. And I was getting into some, not bad stuff, that would really get me hemmed up, but I could have gotten a lot of trouble. Not a lot, a reasonable amount of high school trouble. So the military for me was pivotal. South Florida has a record of producing some stains on the earth, and I've lost some friends to a lot of the stuff that goes down in South Florida. My brother's lost a lot of people, and getting away to the military and leaving it all behind for, at the time, what caused me to join the military is I wanted to be a doctor. And because my mom doing things on her own, we lived in a trailer, didn't have any money, I wasn't gonna be able to afford school. So this was it. And because I was kind of a punk in high school, I didn't earn a scholarship or anything like that. So the military was the only option, and it was a good one.
Any issues graduating? Did you have to do summer school, all that?
Yeah. So, I'm like, don't incriminate yourself all this time later. So I came upon enough Corona to fill a Grand Jeep Cherokee Laredo in the back my senior year. And we had a senior picnic that was, instead of going to school, we all go to the picnic, hang out, and have fun. And so I showed up with all these Coronas and invited all my buddies, like, come on, hang out in the Jeep, and we're drinking Coronas and blaring the music system. And next thing you know, knock on the window, and I turn over, and it's a police officer. And I was like, oh. And everyone in the car, there's probably like 6 people, just we're all gone. They didn't even wait to hear what he said. Everyone threw their beers on the floor, beers pouring all over the car. And
you're like, how do people get out of a car without opening a door or a window?
Right. And so, police officers like, what are you doing? Smells like alcohol. Can you step out? And because it was a school event, it was an alcohol-related incident on a school event, and so I wasn't allowed to participate in commencement. Yeah, I forgot about that one.
Along those lines, though, academics-wise, were you...
I didn't do school.
And the reason why I asked that is because I know you mentioned your mom was in the medical field and she put herself through school. Where does, of all things, where does wanting to be a doctor come from?
Well, I think at the time in my youth, seeing my mom,
because there's no education required to be a doctor.
Yeah, right. I always tested into the gifted, whatever classes when I was growing up. So they put me in Florida. I think they called it major work area, which is where you just do way more advanced level work. When I moved to Florida, I would say this was 8th grade. They asked me, which was really the downfall. They were like, hey, so, you tested, we're going to put you in all our advanced classes. And I was like, do I have to? And they're like, what do you mean? It's like, do I have to? I don't really want to. And I don't even know if my mom got a decision in that. I think they just listened to me and let me not go in all the advanced classes. And that started my Florida man. Not then, but pretty shortly after, I started getting into trouble and not focusing on school. They've got a program where you work, OJT, DCT, Diversified Career Technology was what it was called. So by my senior year, I only went to school until 11 o'clock. And then it was work, job.
A job that you had to find or a job that they placed
you? A job that I had to find, and then you get credits for. So my senior year, I actually had an insanely high GPA because the way it worked is every class that you took in class, you got a grade for. All of your work classes were like, if you got an A for that, you got A for all of the classes that you would have missed. And so my GPA was through the roof when I was leaving high school. But in the beginning, it was trash. I was having fun in school. It was a social place for me. Just reminds me of like Napoleon Dynamite back in '83. Man. Bunch of surfers hanging out, partying, having fun. Yeah, so the academic piece, wanting to become a doctor, a lot to do with money. What's going to make a lot of money? Lawyers and doctors. Growing up in a trailer with no money, I wanted to spend that differently. And so I didn't really care which I did until I signed up for the military and they said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I'll be a doctor or a lawyer. And they said, we don't have any law jobs that you can do until you're an E4. So what we can do is put you in medicine. You can become a corpsman. And that'd be a good transition. So
before we jump into you going into the military, the one thing I want to circle back to is what you said earlier is boogie boarding during a hurricane.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned surfing. So were you more of a surfer or a boogie boarder? And then along those lines, was it legitimately in a hurricane?
Yes.
What's that experience like?
It's not that much different than, it depends on the conditions. So it was a hurricane. My grandparents took me to the beach in a hurricane where everything was shut down. We got to the beach. The lifeguards came down and they're like, hey, he can't go out without fins on.
How old are you?
8.
Without fins on.
Yeah, without fins on. You gotta love, the past. And so they drove me 35 minutes back to the house, got fins, came back, let me paddle out. I got crushed, sucked in between the pilings of the pier, but never impacted. But I thought I was going to. I thought I was getting sucked out. I thought it was over until I finally got exploded by a wave and it pushed me on shore. And I came crawling up the sand, looking at my grandmother like, so, yep, boogie boarding.
In all her sympathy and empathy. So you got that shit out of your system?
I don't think so. I think she was always just excited to see me go for it.
Anybody else on the beach that day?
Surfers. Few.
Nobody would like, maybe an 8-year-old shouldn't be out here.
Well, that's a little bit of the surf culture, you'll see fathers with their kids out right away. Like I had my kid at 3. If he had enjoyed it by the time he's 8, I mean, he would have been ready.
Right.
But yeah, so I boogie boarded. That was when I was still in Indiana, living in Indiana, just visiting family, or our friends. I'm trying to figure out how that worked. Because boogie boarding, I felt like was every once in a while when I was visiting. Surfing was when I finally moved back, 8th grade, immediately bought a surfboard, and that was it. I was hooked. First time I stood up and rode in, even though it was just straight to the beach. I mean, the feeling was overwhelming. Being by yourself, not a care in the world about anything but this moment, being here. I was highly addicted from that point forward.
Did you realize at a young age that it sounds like the ocean is yours? It's where you kind of feel, I'm not going to overuse the cliche, but that's your home?
Absolutely. And I would say, my grandmother took me to the YMCA for their swim program when I was 2. And starting from 2, I swam competitively until 7th grade.
What was your specialty?
Freestyle. And so that was, the water was my place, always felt comfortable underwater. Always wanted to be in it. My son's the exact same way. He really does love the water. He always wants to be in it. It just has to be on his terms. But the water is definitely the comfort. It's the home.
Now, that's the logical then transition to the Navy. But prior to selecting the Navy and even making the decision to go to the military, how's that process play out for you? Did you know anybody who was in the military prior to that?
So my grandfather, which is my grandfather-in-law, technically, Norman, he was a World War II pilot. I found out later that my other grandfather, blood grandfather, his brother was, I think, in the Army. But that's it. The military was not a big piece of my family. Anybody talked about. Nothing had really gone on for a little while, for at least my age. And so when I signed up, the reason I did is because there was a guy I surfed with who was working at the restaurant that I was working at. And he was like, dude, I just signed up for the Navy. They're paying me $60,000 and college is free and da-da-da-da. And my grandmother had been saving for me to go to some type of advanced education, Culver Academy, which I believe is in Indiana, when I was young, but didn't end up doing that. And then it was going to be for college later since I didn't go to Culver. And so I called her and was like, hey, if I pay for college, what happens to all that money? She's like, well, I'll give it to you for a house then. I was like, perfect. That was it. I heard the guy, get college money, get other money, go explore the world. Perfect. So it really was a pretty knee-jerk reaction out of nowhere. No one could believe it that knew me because I was a little punk.
Anybody try to talk you out of it?
No way. No. I think my family was over the moon, right? Because I was a little golden boy forever and always, and that's all they knew. And now I'm joining the military too. And then I don't know if it was right before I left or it might have been after I'd already done boot camp, but I had to sit down with my mom and I confessed everything. And she was like, I was like, yeah. So keep an eye on our brother.
So when'd you go in?
2001, July 5th.
Good timing.
Yeah.
Not that you knew.
Like I said, what had happened in the military? It wasn't even a thought. Sure, a safe way to get college money and do your thing. And oh, sure, I'll go into medicine. That's got to be safe too, like where am I going to be? A hospital? So I graduate boot camp September 9th.
Great Lakes.
Mm-hmm.
How was that? Now, nobody ever talks about Navy's boot camp as being the most difficult, but even still, you went from, I'll loosely call you a wild child kind of surfer guy, into the structure of the military. How was that for you?
Perfect. And I think that had a lot to do with my adaptability that I had been forming over the years. I was pretty headstrong. And so I don't know if somebody said it to me or if I just told myself, like, this is all a mind game. None of it's real. You just gotta do it, Forrest Gump that thing. And I just heard it. And that's exactly what I did. I did it sarcastically. I was louder than everybody, sounded off. My boots were more polished than anybody. My bed was the best made. They had nothing to mess with me about other than messing with me to do it. I was doing when I first got there, I didn't know anything about SEALs or divers or EOD. And so I did get sucked into the dive program the dive motivator program for buds to become a SEAL. And so it was great because that was mostly water centric. And once again, going back to like my personality and the water history, they would play pays to be a winner. So whoever would win the sprint could get out and go like jump off this 4-story platform and just have fun, something you couldn't do in boot camp. And so I'm just smoking everybody in these races, and now I'm having fun in boot camp. And because it was a special program and I was the only one in my whole division, I got up early before everyone else. I left on my own, walked down to PT on my own, walked back to chow on my own. So I got a lot of alone time too, which is really cool.
But simply because of your proficiency in the water, they kind of went, hey, did you ever think about this path?
No, they just asked everybody, anybody ever thought about this? And here's our big motivational speech. And I did the whole thing throughout boot camp to wrap that part of the story up, passed everything. And at the end, when I was signing the contract, they were like, hey, here's all the contract stuff. And I said, how much time am I going to have to go to college? Because for me, it was go to college, get college money, go to med school. And they looked at me and they're like, you're probably never going to go to school, ever. We're busy all the time. And so I said, oh, well, that's not why I'm here. So I'm not going to do that. Everything's perfect. Part of me wishes I'd known better, but, my son probably wouldn't be here. So yeah, I had a blast. I loved every minute of boot camp. I know that if anybody ever hears this who was in my class, they'll completely attest, because, somebody would get caught doing something and one of the people would start PTing, 2 people in the middle of the squad bay or whatever we called it, barracks. And she'd be like, I need volunteers. And I was the first to run out, start doing, 8-count bodybuilders or something. And I got to like 120. And she's like, that's it. Go back to your bed. I better get another body in 5, 4. And I'm watching, and nobody ran back out. So I just ran back out. I loved it. Sitting there, they'd be beating one guy and I'd fall out of formation and start pushing next to him. And he's like, what are you doing? One team, one fight. Like, just like you can't hurt me, dude. No matter what you want to do, it's not going to happen. And then when I left boot camp and went to Field Medical Service School to become FMF corpsman, they fixed me because they knew they couldn't physically beat me. So they made me write 1,500-word essays on honor, courage, and commitment. That slowed me down real quick.
More than one way to skin a cat.
Yeah. But,
so did you go in originally on a corpsman contract and then it was going to translate over?
Yes.
Or transfer over, but you just defaulted back to the corpsman contract?
Right. So yeah, I was corpsman, contracted in, could have gone SEAL, opted out, went to Corps school. Yeah.
So I'm assuming you were in corpsman school then on 9/11.
No, I graduated September 9th. We'd had boot camp graduation September 9th. Then we got to go out into Chicago with our family for September 10th. And then September 11th, my family flew home, and this happened September 11th. And so then the whole base got locked down while I was still at boot camp. I don't remember. I thought it was all a joke, to be honest, because we had just done battle stations and, oh, you graduated. Now we're at war. Ah. Okay. So I don't really think I really believed it for quite some time. I didn't actually see any video of planes flying into the towers until 10 years later on the anniversary, because I was in school, in like the school setting, the barrack setting, not watching the news, and we're pretty locked up. So yeah, but corpsman contract, corpsman across the street. And then they said, you're all going with the Marines.
So corpsman school was also at Great Lakes?
Mm-hmm. Not anymore. It was. Now it's down in Texas. Yeah. So Corps School, Great Lakes. They said we're all going with the Marines, which was, like I said, I thought I was doing medicine, Navy, no threat whatsoever, But now here I am going with the Marines. But I loved that.
Who'd you get assigned to?
I didn't get assigned to the Marine Squadron first because I picked up another school, aviation med tech. So I learned physicals for pilots and stuff in Pensacola. So I did the Marine boot camp in Camp Lejeune, then did the sea school for the Navy in Pensacola. And then I got orders.
You went to Marine boot camp?
It's not Marine boot camp.
Okay.
But it's what the Marines do for Navy corpsmen and chaplains, or I think anybody who's going to go with the Marine unit. We go to field medical service school. Yeah, so I guess it would only be corpsmen. There's no RPs. And they give us a version of it. We're all sleeping in open bay barracks. They're waking us up, throwing trash cans down the hall. We're in formation, 4:30 in the morning, freezing in our skivvies, We're going on force marches and runs and getting slammed up against the wall in the chow line for eating croutons. Like, it's a good experience.
Were you still the loudest one and the first one to volunteer?
Pretty much. I met a good buddy, JR, in boot camp, and we became best friends instantly at the pool deck because he said he was going to Corps School too. And so then we were roommates in Corps School, and then, grew up same lifestyle, South Florida, surfers, a little bit of, I was the wild boy of the two for sure, but he was a good teammate and causing some trouble.
What was the first unit you actually got to?
Marine Corps or my first duty station?
Duty station.
Duty station was Naval Health Clinic, Patuxent River, Maryland, in Pax River, Maryland. So I was an AVT there, just doing Navy stuff. And then I got flagged for the mobile augmentation program, basically needing more bodies to deploy. And so HMH 461 out of New River needed a body. So they hit us up and they sent me down to New River for a month to do a little workup with them. And then we were off to Djibouti, Africa for 9 months. So that was my first unit, was HMH 461. And then came back from there, went to aviation physiology tech school to teach pilots and aircrew like emergency procedures, survival first aid, spatial disorientation, sensory, how to get out of helicopters when they're sinking underwater. Super, super cool job. And then
where was that duty station at?
That was in Whidbey Island, Washington, was my first. And then came back to the Marine Corps in Miramar 2009. In 2009, I guess I went to 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing. And so then that's when I did another 5-year stint. That's where I got my Afghanistan deployment under 3rd MAW, and then ended up flying again with 361 and 466 and 461. My old squadron, who I originally got my combat wings with, they ended up coming out, and I ended up flying with some of my first pilots that I flew with in 2004.
Am I understanding correctly, is it a helicopter crew?
Helicopter crew.
Every helicopter crew has a corpsman?
No. So Casevac will. Absolutely. We're heavy lifters, moving lots of people and equipment. And so although we did stand up a Casevac mission out there, I was not in a corpsman capacity on board the helicopter. When I first got to my first unit, 461 in '04, they were like, hey, we need flyers. Do you want to become aircrew? I was like, yeah, what do I need to do? I said, go through this training, do all your water survival stuff, your class, make sure your physical's good. And when you get here, we're going to home grow you. And so when I got out to Africa, talked to my doctor that I was working for and said, in order for me to fly, I need to go down there and be a crewman. I need to learn the aircraft. And he's like, yep, that makes sense. You're the doc, so be where your Marines are. And that's down on the flight line. And so I spent, those 9 months. I got my aircrew wings, flew all the NATOPS flights and took the tests. And then once I got my aircrew wings, started earning credit for combat aircrew wings. And so then when I got back with 3rd MAW in 2009, when I went out to the squadron, I was already a wing wearer, said, hey, this is who I am. This is what I do. We're going to Afghanistan together. If you need another door gunner, I'd love to. And so then they were like, yeah, no, come on. So I was flying as a door gunner in both capacities. Corpsman, yeah, it just depends on the mission.
Going back to your original vision of becoming a doctor,
Mm-hmm.
was there ever that aspect? Because you can only go, and I don't mean this negatively or sarcastically, you can only go so far as an enlisted
Correct.
to become close to a doctor.
Correct.
Was there ever an opportunity to change your path, or did you go, you know what, I'm just going to stay on this path?
Yeah, no. So the path was locked, cocked, full on until my son was born, and he got the diagnosis of autism. My very first duty station in PAX, I was taking 5 classes a semester, 5 and 4 depending on the semester. Taking a full load as soon as we moved from PAX.
On your own or through the Navy? Like, was the Navy funding you to go to school?
So at the time, it was tuition assistance, and I want to say that they were paying 75% of as much school as you wanted to do. And so I was taking a lot, paying very little. It later changed to where they'll pay 100%, but of only 12. I think you can get a waiver for up to 14 or 15 credits a year. So that slowed things down a little bit. But yeah, so mostly funded by Navy TA.
But you're still doing school on your own time.
At night, I would go to school or work during the day. I did, for one specific class, they let me out of work on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2:30 so that I can get there for this class that was only offered at that time. But yeah, did it all off hours at night with a wife. She was studying to go to law school. So we were both just full up in school as much as possible. Because of the moving colleges, I ended up having to take a lot of classes on repeat. I think I've got over 400 college credits when it's all added up. And so I got all my school done, finally got everything I needed for a bachelor's through Chapman University, and then did all my prerequisites to be able to apply for med school through here in California, the various community colleges, taking OChem, Gen Chem, bio, physics. Studied for the MCAT with a $10,000 prep course at UCSD. And I guess that would have been like 2009-10 timeframe. And then my son was born, 2013, I think. And at that point, what had happened was I'd taken the MCAT, didn't do that well. So I was studying to take it again, took it the next year, did better, wasn't enough, studied it some more, took it the next year, did better, son born, diagnosed. And then I realized, like, I can't be in med school when my son has autism and is needing therapy 5 days a week. And so it was at that moment that I quit. The great thing about wanting to be a doctor and having that carrot was it drove me. It drove my performance at work. It drove my behavior, my attitude. how I held myself, carried myself, how I spoke to everybody. I mean, everything was an interview always. I was always trying to leave a good impression. And it made me very successful. That's worked real well in the military. And so when I finally made the decision, I don't think I'm going to go to med school. My son needs me. It was like, whew, now what do I do? All that serious drive, now what do we do? So that's when I decided to go to dive school, become a Navy diver. Very late in my career. I was 35 when I went.
When you graduated college, was there the opportunity to go officer?
So I technically do not have a graduate certificate yet. I put the pause on finishing my last 2 credits.
Got it.
Because the way tuition assistance works is as long as you are pursuing that degree, they'll pay for it. But once you get a bachelor's, they're not going to pay for you to, at least this is what I was told. So if anybody's watching, they're like, that's not right. That they wouldn't pay for you to do any bachelor's credits anymore once you got your bachelor's. And so I put a pause because it was like, I still had like another 10 years left in the service. And I was like, okay, well, this way, if I ever want to change it and go into whatever, technology or computer, whatever, they would still pay for all my classes. So I never finished. When I retired, I did reach out to the college and ask, if I could still do my thing. So I've got to take two classes to add to my 400 credits.
But at this point, when you pivoted away, your son's born, were you already committed, though, to making it a career in the Navy? Were you already thinking that long-term aspect? Or did that kind of change with your son being born also?
I'm trying to remember when I decided to make a career of it. I think I had already decided to make a career when I decided to be a doctor, because if the timeline that I mapped out is if I had gotten into med school at around 8 to 10 years, it would be 4 years that doesn't count towards your time in service until you have 20 active. And then for the school I was wanting to apply for was USUS, which is now USU. And I want to say their obligation payback was an additional like 7 or 8, not including internship and residency. And so I had put it in my head where I'm going to get picked up for medicine. I'm going to do my 4 years plus my internship, residency, my payback time. I'm at 30 years. And there's nothing wrong with that because, doctors like push button promotion, might make commander or captain, retire at 30, life's done. So I was planning on doing 30. It wasn't until my son was born and I decided I wasn't going to med school. Now it's like, oh, I think I'm going to get out at 20, not a day over it. Because I missed a lot of time with my son. I was with SEAL delivery team out in Hawaii my last 4 years. And I want to say in the last year for school, 5 years I was in, I missed 900 days of my kid's life. And I was over that. It was starting to hurt. And so yeah, if anything, he shortened my time in service. Yeah, if it wasn't for him, I 100% would still be in. I loved what I did. I mean, to be the doc, just travel around with your team and be able to be more than just, the doc, but a friend, a therapist, chaplain. Yeah, you're always filling your cup by helping others fill their own, So
I cut you off when you started to say, so you pivoted to Navy diver later in life, older.
Yep.
What was that process like?
That was fun. It happened because all my friends that I met in San Diego were divers. I met one diver, and then he introduced me to his group of friends who were all divers. And so I spent 9 years in San Diego, burning it down in Pacific Beach with a whole bunch of Navy divers for 9 years and realizing we're all kind of alike. This is probably the community that I've been missing. I'm going to have to go check that out.
You've got a lot of coffee options out there. You've got a lot of veteran and first responder-owned coffee companies as well. Trident Coffee is one of these companies, but they're different. Trident fuels your body and mind with a premium cold brew that's infused with powerful ingredients for performance, focus, and wellness. Made with organic MCT oil, lion's mane, and reishi mushrooms, this isn't just coffee. It's fuel for your brain, ensuring smooth, steady energy with no jitters and no crashes. Plus, the cocoa powder adds antioxidants, and the electrolytes keep you hydrated and balanced. Yes, they are cold brew experts, and their beans are brewed for cold brew optimization. But what does that mean for those of you who also love hot coffee like me? Their coffee tastes amazing, not bitter. So enjoy it hot or iced, mixed into your protein shake, or take it on the go. However you drink it, Trident Coffee is coffee upgraded. Get yours now at tridentcoffee.com and use the promo code TDP15 for 15% off your order. That's TDP15 for 15% off your order. Stay sharp, stay fueled, stay ready.
It was great getting there. There was a little hiccup. I kind of got big in social media, if you whatever you want to say. TikTok, over 200,000 followers, and I was really into it, making content all the time. And this other military guy who made YouTube videos asked me if he could interview me to ask what I was doing to prep to go to dive school. So I said, sure. All my diver friends told me what it was, what I needed to expect. So I felt like I had good gouge that I could share. And we made a little video. He titled it How to Become a U.S. Navy Diver. I watched it. It looked like very well done, not braggish, not I know anything, very humble. My friend who's a diver told me this. My friend who's a diver told me this,
I'm assuming it sounded like it wasn't received well.
Oh my goodness. And now being a diver, I can look back and realize, like, if I saw someone put a video on the internet that said how to become a Navy diver and you're not one, what? And
but it sounded like a great idea at the time.
Yeah, I was, I'll get some more followers, I'll get some more engagement. It was, received by a community that's a little bit testosterone alpha led, and we're very proud.
So you had made it before day one of dive school?
I made it before even going to dive prep in Chicago. And so why, that story is important is because it got out quickly and was received very poorly. And because of my friends who were divers in the Navy, they were like, one person, I'll leave him undisclosed, he sent me screenshots of the Facebook group, which was not going to share it. But it was very adamant that I was not supposed to make it through. And so when I got to dive prep in Chicago, walking down the hallway in my dress blues, Chief looks out the door and he's like, I don't know what the language rules are in here. Holy effing S, Hollywood's here. Can I beat this mother effer in his dress blues? And the senior chief was like, absolutely. So they dropped me immediately, and thus began the, oh, hey, Hollywood. Oh, you said this. Remember in your video? And then dive prep. The good news is I'm good in the water and I have good personality. And so you can hate me before you know me, but I won people over pretty quickly once I got there. And they knew that I was going to make it. But then the same thing happened. They were sending word down in Panama City to all the students who were waiting to class up, like, hey, this McMahon's coming. We're going to make sure he quits, which means that we have to beat your whole class until he quits. So like everybody was hating me before they even knew me. All the instructors frothing at the mouth, just waiting to get their hands on me. I love it, because it's like, it's a great test of our own character, and I know where my level is, which I don't. I don't know where I'll quit because I haven't found it yet. And they brought it. They definitely brought it. I got extra attention that I didn't see anybody ever get. And, I still made it through. I think we classed up 64 people in dive prep and we graduated 8. So
is that a normal attrition rate?
It's pretty high. It's a pretty high attrition rate. I can't speak to this time right now because I know we're low manning, hurting. We're hurting for people. I don't understand that. Such an awesome job. I mean, you really get to be a professional. Whereas military's about being militant in everything, and the I don't know. I'm not going to get into that.
Real quick, going back to the content creation, what drew you to it originally? And on your TikTok side, what were you putting out?
So what drew me to it initially was the Snapchat filters back in the day. And I would just talk, use the filters and talk, and I would send it to all my friends. And then that app opened up to where you can just publicly post your story. And then all of a sudden, somebody created a web page of like all the top Snapchatters that you should be watching. And I was on it. And all I was filming was me and my son and me, running around, playing, skateboarding, just living. And I guess at the time in social media, that wasn't what anybody else was doing. It was, I was a rare breed. You didn't have a lot of skateboard vlogging, And I got the fisheye lens, started buying, accessories that made the content all look really cool. And from that, I met a lot of people that were top creators, starting businesses, being very successful. I pitched some projects that we worked on together. People were really receptive. I guess I was early enough on. Then my account ended up growing rapidly. I think I quickly got over to like 120,000 followers. The app was featuring my videos once a week, and every time I'd get a video featured, hundreds of thousands of views, thousands of followers. Ended up getting a verified account. I was adamant. I was doing it every day, and that actually happened in IDC school. While I was going through my advanced medical training stuff, I was editing, going back to like how school is for me. I didn't pay attention in class. I edited videos, became a verified creator, and passed IDC school. Yeah. And the whole dive school thing, thank you for actually bringing this up. That whole scenario with the social media killed my social media. Well, because now, for all inclusive purposes, got people threatening to not let me off the bottom of a pool, right? And then everybody's like, we're the silent professionals, we don't brag about who we are and what we do. And then once I became a diver, I ended up with SEAL Team. Not going to make videos. And so, that 4 year, that was a 5-year window of hands off, which is kind of, now that I'm in the process of starting this nonprofit, I know what I need to do, but having had been there before, I'm not that anxious to get back to it. I'd really like a social media person, but
there's not a lot of work involved in it.
It's completely consuming. When you were talking about it in your setup, I was like, I don't know the podcast world, but I know video editing and shooting and putting music to the back of it and syncing it up and making it transition and flow and constantly coming up with ideas. And yeah, it's a lot. And then engagement and talking to everybody. But I do have, this is kind of, I don't know, maybe good for you too. Throughout some of the veteran transition programs, they told me about one tool where you basically build an internship into your company. and then you take it to the universities. And for social media marketing, graphic design, whatever things you can pull into the social media world, you offer an internship. It's unpaid, but they get college credit. They get to do a project, and you have someone who comes and manages your social media. So that's something I'm looking into.
I'm going to cut the interview right now and go research
Yeah,
it.
right.
So as a diver, were they pulling you as a corpsman to be a diver, or were you in theory, walking away from being a corpsman to become a diver?
You are a dive medical specialist. So, I mean,
in the normal path of things, does somebody become a diver and then they go, hey, we need a corpsman in the group, go to corpsman school? It's always they pull a corpsman into dive school.
It's kind of like Marines don't have corpsmen, right? So you have Marines, you have a corpsman, train a corpsman to be with Marines, boom, Marine corpsman. Same thing. You have corpsman, you send them to dive medicine. Actually, no, DMMP, if that's what it's called now. The dive medical portion of dive school is in the middle of dive school, which makes sense because we need to make sure you can cut it before we teach you the medicine side. But once you finish the medicine side, I mean, it's really on you as a corpsman how much you'll dive, but you're generally an accessory diver. You dive because you want to and you need to keep your quals up. Some super motivated corpsmen are like, no, I'm a diver. This is what I want to do. I want to get qualified in everything that they get qualified in. I want to be soup and chamber soup and running everything. And that does happen, and then, I've heard stories where divers will say, yeah, he's just as much a diver as any one of us. But I think it's kind of the same thing with the Marines, right? You get the corpsmen who show up. We don't have a lot of work to do if we don't have any work to do. If there's not people needing first aid or some type of, sick call care, what are we doing? Admin, sitting around coking and joking in the office or trying to find something to do. Whereas, going back to my Marine experience when I first got there, all of my free time was spent as a maintainer, opening up the whole helicopter, ragging things down, cleaning out, the engines, doing dailies, turnarounds. And because of that, I was welcomed as like, dude, you are an asset, like in and out. And had I never come down, except you'd be like, hey, anybody need anything? Then it wouldn't be well received. But I guess the full answer to your question is it totally depends. Primary function, we are medicine. We sit on the side, we sit on the boat, we tend to the bag. The good news is with Naval Special Warfare, they're creating SOTMs or special warfare medics. The SEALs are also becoming medics, which have allowed them to cover our med coverage so that we could go also dive. So there are good things that happen, where we do get opportunities, but it's either you need multiple corpsmen, which we don't always have, especially in the diving community, or you need some other coverage, or it's just us sitting on a bag, traveling with the guys, having as much fun as we can.
So for you, when you went into dive school, coming out, was your plan or your vision to get assigned to a SEAL team, or what were you hoping to do with it?
So I had already known I was going to the SEAL team. That was basically when I was talking to the Sea Schools detailer. They told me the only way they would let me go to dive school is if I went to the advanced med school training, the IDC, Independent Duty Corpsman school. And if I passed that, then they would let me go to dive school because we were so undermanned for dive IDCs. Honestly, and what my path will never happen again. No one will be a 35-year-old first class E6 and go to dive school because, the community realized like, dude, this was dumb. We spent a lot of money training this dude. He did 4 years and retired. We need someone to come in, infancy, learn it all, go up through the phases. So by the time you're a dive IDC, you are a subject matter expert on diving. Whereas I was showing up as a dive IDC at my first diving command, learning diving. I think I got off of what was the question?
Just what your plan was to...
Oh, so for the SEAL team, that was Sea School detailer asked me, how do you feel about SEAL team in Hawaii? Yeah, I guess I'll take that. And he's like, all right, as long as you pass, that's where you're going. And so going into dive school, I knew where I was going.
Now, you've already mentioned that because of your son is what changed your plan not to go 30. Was it simply the decision point of I'm just away from my son too much doing this that caused you to think about getting out sooner?
No. There's a piece about his mother and I, where the future of our situation needed to be anchored a little bit more. So I think, being permanently put here in California and not moving around, so that at least whatever happened in our relationship, the focus would be, okay, well, let's make that happen. But once again, it all goes back to Jax. It was Jax, my son. If it wasn't for him and making sure I get to be around him and see him as often as possible, I would still be in.
So when did you actually get out?
2022. I did 21 years.
And coming to the end of that, were you still in Hawaii at the time?
Yes.
Was your plan to come back to California right away, or?
Once I got stationed in San Diego in 2009, it was pretty quickly after that. I was like, this is where I'm retiring. We did 9 years here, so this was my longest duty station. I did know a lot of people here at the time and saw the environment very conducive to business and success. And so California always felt like the place to go. Everything's perfect, but part of me wishes maybe I'd thought that out a little bit more and retired and stayed in Hawaii. But everything's perfect and happens exactly as it's supposed to. So here we are.
So what was your plan for post-military life?
Post-military life was between project management and medical device sales. I had a friend who retired a year before me and got into medical device, was making great money, and said, I'll basically pave the way for you the best I can. Actually, I had a few friends that said that, and one didn't pan out so well. The other one, he did exactly as he said. He got me the meetings, the lunches. We helped pack with other members of the team so that I could meet people on a offline basis. And I was in cardiology. I was spending all my time at Balboa Naval Hospital, working in cardiology, not working, but shadowing, observing, watching, their echoes and scrubbing in on their open heart surgeries, putting in pacemakers, defibrillators.
No, is this after you were out, or were you
after I was out?
Okay, so were you able to do a lot of the networking at all while you were still in, or kind of being in Hawaii, you were kind of too far away?
A little bit too far away, and I don't really. I was playing hard until the last minute. My team was deploying, getting ready for deployments. I was gone up till about 2 months before I retired. I was not ready. I wasn't. And that's the only reason I did 21, because, I said, oh, my son, 20, I'm out. And then 20 rolled around and I was like, oh, what am I going to do? I need to stick around for another year. And then that didn't help either, because we did so much traveling that last year. And then I was also in FOMO, fear of missing out, and the whole military life is coming to an end and this chapter is over and my friends everything's about to be different. And so I gave it my all.
I'm going to wring this towel for every drip of water that's in it.
Yeah.
So you're back in San Diego. You're doing the networking thing. You're getting in front of who you need to get in front of. How does do you end up in medical sales or?
So I got passed up for the job. There was somebody, a hire that was already at the hospital that they were trying to close. That's what I was told, and I totally believe it. It's fine. And so I got put on like a wait, see what's going to happen. And then I started talking to, I forget the acronym, but pacemakers, different companies for pacemakers, maybe a whole different, still in cardiology, but it was very different than what I was trying to do with Abbott. And so started looking at different worlds. Along that whole line, that time frame, I was also dealing with some illness that started about 3 months after I retired that just felt like the flu, and would never go away. And so I ended up, colonoscopy, endoscopy, gastro, long-term, like over a year of like appointments and follow-ups and trying to figure out what was wrong. I thought it was like H. pylori, diverticulitis, who knows? But really no answers for that. And so in this whole year that I'm waiting to figure out if I'm getting a job, I'm also dealing with this illness, and really started losing some hope, thinking like it was a tumor, like a end of the line tumor, because I couldn't I went from being in the best shape of my life, a year prior, to could barely walk up some steps, very lethargic, just always breaking out into sweats, feeling sick. And so I ended up being offered a free retreat out to Guatemala that I didn't think I was going to be able to energetically do, because it was a fishing and surfing retreat. And I was like, geez, I can't walk up steps. How am I going to reel in some fish and catch waves? But I was like, if I'm dying, I'm waiting for this tumor result, you might as well just do it. And so I went to that retreat, found a little bit of life coming back into me, met a guy who was kind of on the same, he had led the path that I was trying to do at that point, which was where I was trying to shift into thinking about becoming a yoga instructor, breathwork instructor, meditation, doing holistic aspects of life and putting together a surf camp and running a nonprofit surf, program. And he was like, yeah, I've done all that 10, 12 years, Warrior Surf Foundation out in South Carolina. And so I said, I'm retired. I got a little bit of money. I can travel, I'd love to follow you around and learn from you the best as I can. And he said, well, not immediately, this is maybe a month later or something, but he says, hey, we're going to go to Mexico on an ayahuasca retreat. You should come. I didn't know anything about ayahuasca. Didn't really do any research on it.
This is 23?
I think that's probably about right. October 23-ish. Yeah. Because then, we'll get there. And so went there, did that. Perspective on everything changed, which, perspective is reality. Perception is reality. And then came back and I got offered the job. Abbott Med Device called me up and said, hey, we had one guy left, and I talked to everybody who knows you and sounds like we're supposed to work together. And I said, all right, I'll do it. And then I sat there and I thought about it. And I thought about the mission that was forming in my mind of starting this nonprofit, this healing, holistic approach to bringing people back to themselves and connecting with nature, and just felt so much bigger than making a great paycheck and having a great quality of life with a company car. And, working between San Diego and Oahu would have been my region. It was going to be a tough job, but I just didn't feel called to the money that was driving that boat. Because, I'd heard money, so much money. And what I realized was my time is what's super valuable, and my time with my son, and, the time it takes to go to work and come home. He's been home, and I didn't get to take him to school. I didn't get to pick him up. We didn't get to do after school stuff. It's like eat dinner and go to bed, a little bit of interaction time. And I'm trying to make up for a lot of lost time. And so the money didn't sound good to me anymore. And I turned down the job and decided that was when I was going full on with pursuing this dream of, helping people heal themselves. Which, we talk more about that whenever.
Two avenues that I want to go down. I want to go back to the initial onset of the medical problem, and then going on the fishing and surfing trip. And you said life kind of started coming back to you. Did you ever figure out what it was? And then how long between that trip and the trip to Mexico for ayahuasca, and what condition were you in when you went down to Mexico for that retreat?
Okay. So I can't definitively say what it was. There's so many possibilities. Did have COVID multiple times. I got all the vaccines, whatever you want to think about that. The boosters, we had to with the team. So could it have been long COVID? Sure. Could it have been vaccine stuff? Sure. Could it have been depression and anxiety and hopping off a machine that was spinning at 4,000 RPM for 21 years, and then all of a sudden I'm just sitting in a house with nobody, nothing. I'm not going to work. I'm not being checked in on. I'm not, there was some, big things happening or coming in the relationship. It was a time where, as a medical provider, it was hard for me to go to the hospital because, the first thing we should ask is like, hey, what was your life like? And has anything changed? And so, a lot has changed. And so really before I felt comfortable going to another doctor outside of, the stuff I'd already done, I had to fix the things that were different. I had to get out more. I had to start being active and exercising, even though I felt sick. I had to have community and be around people. And so,
if I'm understanding correctly, even though you had a very poignant mission in spending more time with your son,
mm-hmm.
outside of that, you didn't really feel like you or had anything in your life? Am I understanding it?
Well, so my son, he's very connected with his mother.
And I only mean by when you weren't with him, there was really nothing else for you.
Even when I was with him, because of his connection with his mother and me being gone all the time, I'm the odd man out. And so
you're still in a point where he's trying to relearn all the missed time.
Mm-hmm. And so I'm over here going, hey, I'm not in the military anymore. What do you want to do? You want to go surf? You want to go to the beach? You want to go to the park? You want to go do this? And he's like, no, I don't want to do any of that. And then, okay, what do you want to do? I just want to be by myself. Oh. And then I'll come in his room, he's reading a book or something or playing on his piano. Oh, hey, can I listen? I'd prefer you didn't. Just want my own time. So I was always alone. And I would be silly to think that anybody who knows me could tell you that I was one of the happiest, most energetic, positive, full life, never stopping, driving the bus of fun forever. And to see where I was afterwards, it was pretty different. And I just didn't have any, I didn't have anything. I didn't have any energy. I didn't know what was going on. Crying a lot just because I didn't understand. Part of it was like fear. Like, am I really dying? Are we just finding a tumor? Is it this life? Is it everything that's going on? The marriage, the child, the job, and people could see, people who, knew me, they could see things were going on. But so, Guatemala, really what I feel like I felt initially was just, I just wasn't noticing that I felt so sick. Because it was like waves of chills, feverish chills that would come over me. My stomach just like that right before you're going to throw up feeling. And, we were busy. We got up at like 4:30 in the morning, packed up, grabbed food. We're on the road, driving for an hour, 2 to 3 hour boat ride out into the middle of the ocean. So I really didn't have a lot of time to think about anything. And so I feel like that was a big piece. And then I went straight from Guatemala. I think I did 10 days there. I went straight to Costa Rica because I felt like the healing was starting and I needed to stay gone and keep working on it. So I went to hang out with a friend in Costa Rica for 15 days. We're more of the same, just feeling like, wow, I feel like I'm coming back to life. And then as soon as I got back from Costa Rica was when I had the conversation with the guy from Guatemala who's like, come up to Mexico. And so I went to Mexico in October, which was just a few months after. And then same thing, still, and I would have the feelings, the illness, the whatever, when I came back. It kind of started up again. But was never really there when I was in Costa Rica or Guatemala that much. And so by the time I went to Mexico for my ayahuasca, I was in a better place, but it wasn't gone. It was still kind of there. So by the time I sat in front of my shaman and told them why I'm here, I said, first of all, I'm a medical provider and I've heard that this is a thing. And so I'd like to see it firsthand. If I'm going to be working in medicine one way or another going forward, and my clientele are people who this could benefit, I'd like to see. And then the second is, this illness I've got, it's been going on for, I think, like a year and a half at that time. And I'm just surrendering to the possibility of, all medicine comes from plants, so this, sure, just another form of medicine. And in my, I want to say, in the third ceremony, after the third ceremony, back in my room, I got hit with the biggest wave of the sickness that I had in a while. And turned on the fan, trying to cool off. Now I'm freezing under the blankets. And finally, I just like fully collapsed on the bed, surrendered, gave up, was just like, I don't know what to do. I'm over this sick feeling. And it was like closing your eyes, but instead of it being dark, it was white. And the pain and the stomach illness, the sweats, everything was instantly gone. And I guess we could say perception started changing. I sat there and my eyes closed, white space for probably 4 to 5 hours, writing, recording audio, just being in it, of scenarios of life popping up, and then the perception changing. I'm not going to get into them, but it left me leaving that experience, realizing that we are so responsible for ourselves. and what's happening to us and what we're going through. And much like what I was saying, I can't go to a doctor and say, I'm sick, without being ready to be like, yeah, I have not done all that. And I do need to work on that. I probably should be eating better. I do need to be exercising more. I do need to be meditating and breathing and being in community. Absolutely. And so,
from the basic standpoint, just diet and exercise, had it completely fallen off the cliff for you when you got out?
No, because number one, I'm generally a pretty healthy eater. I'm not any kind of like, oh, I'm not going to eat that. I'll eat anything if it's there, but I try to eat healthy. In the time that I had gone to Mexico, though, I had been put on something called the FODMAP diet from gastroenterology, which, if you've never heard of that, it's the most extreme diet you can ever be on, because it breaks down the molecular level of food that would cause inflammation. And so things, I could have like 4 raspberries or a half of a banana. And a lot of things were just, you couldn't have any of it. And I did that. I was only supposed to do it for 3 months, but I ended up doing it for a long time. I don't really know exactly how long, because it never got better. And then after I got off the FODMAP, then I started eating whatever I wanted for a while. Now we're back to being healthy.
Coming back from Mexico, how do I want to ask this? Did you appreciate the experience? And would you say that was a significant turning point for you?
It was absolutely one of the most significant experiences for me. And the second part of the question was,
in the sense of coming out of that, did it, you mentioned closing your eyes, seeing the white, everything kind of, the physical symptoms kind of going away. When you come back from that, are you 100% good?
Oh, yeah. Everything was gone. No more abdominal, no more sweats, no more. But there was, as much as I appreciate everything about that experience, the ayahuasca piece is the smallest speck on that scale. In order to get there, which, here I am thinking I'm dying, so I took everything serious. It was a 6-week dieta where you remove everything from your life. It's alcohol, drugs, nicotine. You start removing meat at a certain phase, take out all your seasonings, salt, pepper. You can't eat, no sugars, nothing. You are completely deprived of all. No sexual activity, self or with others. That's 6 weeks prior. So when you show up to that container to heal whatever it is you think you're there to work on, you've quieted all the other chatter, right? Our body's being all messed up with all the trash we treat it with. If you're into cannabis or nicotine or alcohol in any way, shape, or form, you've just completely detoxed that. Your body is in its natural state. You go have this potentially profound. Some people don't have anything, which I still think is perfect. And then another 4 weeks after that of abstaining from all those things. So like this journey is realistically like 12 weeks of really coming back to you, not letting in all the junk that we do let in all the time. And when you do that, was it the ayahuasca? Was it the retreat at all? Or was it the fact that I just cleaned my shit up so much for 12 weeks? I realigned all my focus. I took full accountability of how I treat my body, the things I put into my body, whether it be food or television or radio or the people that we're surrounding ourselves with, the energy that we find ourselves in. on just such a grand scale was so different that I honestly can't reflect back and say ayahuasca was the cure. I can't. I could say that when I did all of these things,
And ayahuasca was just one piece of it.
and ayahuasca was one piece, which, you know, my belief of any plant medicine, you know, there's a couple cool things. One, Alan Watts says, when it comes to psychedelics, you're picking up the phone to get an answer. But once you get your answer, hang up the phone and go apply it to your life. So doing things over and over and over, taking ayahuasca over and over and over, that doesn't resonate with me. And I've not really felt any drive to ever want to go back and do it. But the other piece is, I think that who we are and who we become over time is like a very tightly knitted fabric of our ego, our personality, our past, our traumas, everything. And so, you know, we're in this fortress, this temple of tightly woven fabric. And plant medicine allows that to loosen up a little bit so that you can entertain other perspectives. And then you got to apply it, though. You know, you have to entertain the perspective of, I am accountable, you know, having intention and meaning behind things will change everything. And so when, you know, you start doing that, you apply intention and meaning and purpose to the more things you can apply that to in life. You know, it could be having a sip of water, you know, and saying, wow, you know, all the electrolytes in this, or minerals, and how it's hydrating my body and it's going down and in my stomach and nurturing everything. Like, the more we just take time and appreciate and gratitude and be present of what we're doing, I think it changes everything. And so that has been my life coming back since. And, you know, I went to India shortly after that experience because I'd been studying Paramahamsa Yogananda, self-realization fellowship. And, you know, he had some really good stuff to say because he was just trying to teach you how to get back to yourself, quieting the mind, you know, some meditation techniques. And so I went to India, and really what I learned in India was not to take things so seriously. Because they do take spirituality and religion extremely serious out there. And what I also noticed is the people who were, and this is a small story sample case, but people who were way high in the religious, I don't know, they're like classes of people over there. And Brahmin, if I'm saying it correctly, is this really high class, and they're in with the church and blah, 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 blah. But then I would hear this man who's well respected and, you know, everybody sees, and he donates and he's always meditating and this, that, and the other. He beat the crap out of his daughter for getting raped publicly in front of everybody in the where they lived. And, you know, then you hear of husbands and spousal abuse, and it's like realizing how serious they make everything. I was getting yelled at all the time for walking in a certain way, you know, you have to back out, or you can't use that hand to pay, and you're offending and you're upsetting. And it's like, you know, whatever you believe in, whatever that is, knows your heart. It knows what's inside of you. And where I'm at in this place is all love, and everything I'm doing is with love, and nobody's really ready to smite me for, you know, all this, taking things a little bit too serious. So I have, from that, I chilled out a little bit, kind of the pendulum swing of coming back from Mexico and removing everything from my life, going to India thinking that's the way it's supposed to be. Go out into the mountains, live in a cave, don't do anything anymore. For me to then realize, I don't think we're here for that, right? If we were already, you know, depending on what you believe, spiritual beings who came down here for this human experience, right? Like, let's have a human experience. And so, in this time, we're just experiencing things and seeing how life feels, and it's all good. We're out and living and breathing and being in the moment, and the illness hasn't come back. Yeah.
It's easy to say this in the sense that, they always say, oh, the mind is a powerful thing. But, when you are not in your right place, when you are not happy with your circumstances, your situations, your life, whatever you want to call it, your body can manifest that unhappiness in many different ways. Going back to your time in the Navy, were you able to get through 21 years, especially being assigned to special operations, that no major physical issues ever?
Nothing from what we're talking about.
So relatively, you came out of there healthy.
Oh, I guess physically, my body was beaten and worn. Mentally, there was some stuff, but I would say for the most part, yeah, I didn't let anything stick to me.
Or at least you didn't think you did.
At least I didn't think I did. And most people knew the stuff I was going through, because, a lot of it's not really the military. A lot of it's home life, and the stuff I was going through with my brother, the stuff I went through with my mom, my marriage, my child. Like, war kind of felt like the easy piece, right? Like, that's a big adrenaline ride, getting shot at and living to tell about it. That part was awesome. All the other stuff kind of can hit you hard. And so I think that if anything, military helped me sustain feeling good, because the thing I kind of reflect back on is everything I was doing in the military was my treatment. My home life and the family and brothers and anything else really was the trauma. And then I would go to work and sit in a room where people loved to come talk to me and have great conversation, and they left feeling, thanks, doc, thanks for the meds, thanks for the console, thanks for whatever. We deploy all the time, so I was traveling, seeing the world, being outdoors all the time with the guys, shooting bows and arrows and, cruising around, having fun, being on the boats, bringing my ukulele everywhere, playing like, an old jester, just making up songs and making people laugh. And I was living, surfing nonstop. We tried to surf every single day when I lived in Hawaii. And what I was really realizing, and this is my summary of how I got sick, was I was sustaining everything because I had all that treatment, right? What do we want to tell you to do? Get out in nature, go join community, have a purpose, all the things. And so as soon as basically retiring meant I quit my treatment, and was, instead of having a big community of people to do my treatment for myself with, now I'm just all alone, trying to find my new community, right? And for my peer group, I'm one of very few that are retired right now. A lot of my friends are still active, and so I really was pretty solo, like, hey, what are you guys up to? Hey, you want to get involved in this program? Hey, you wanna? And no, I'm trying to talk my buddies into retiring, and my wife will kill me. So, the therapy, I think, was the service, and finding the civilian therapy is where I've been, and where now I'm trying to transition into sharing that with others, through the Namaste and because it is a little bit lonely, you know? And I would say the VA and medical is, from the horror stories I've heard of people who retired 10 years ago, it's nothing like what people told me it used to be. You know, I feel like they're really doing their best, but at the same time, like, it really boils down to us taking care of ourselves, right? Like, I got a lot of calls for a couple years when I first retired. Hey, are you okay? I'm just checking in. Hey, do you need this? You need this? And the whole time, yeah, I'm fine. Meanwhile, I was spiraling and falling apart. And, you know, anytime, my gastroenterologist, actually, she was one of the first ones to say, you ever think about looking into mental health for your stomach stuff? And I was like, you have no idea who I am and how, like, I just don't handle stress like that. You know, my mom got a little physical raising me. And, you know, back then, like, something switched to where I started laughing instead of crying. So it's just, when someone said you could be depressed, it was like, no, there's no way. And even now, like, saying it, I still don't ever feel like that's what it was, but I have to entertain the possibility and the likelihood that it all makes sense, that, you know, I jumped off the gravitron and all of a sudden I'm sitting there spinning, trying to figure out which way's up. And
that's the biggest point that I would say a lot of people need to understand and realize. You may not feel what you think should, or what depressed should be. Mm. But at the end of the day, going back to our mind being a very powerful machine, you may not perceive yourself as being depressed. But if there's a bunch of stuff in your life that's not right, you need to at least consider it. Yeah. And that's where I think the big struggle for our communities is, and I want to say that it's getting better.
Yeah, for sure.
Is pushing aside that ego. Mm-hmm. Going back to, you know, you said you went, you did ayahuasca, you don't feel currently the need to go back and do it again. But I do believe that whether you want to get woo-woo, whatever it is on or not, it allows you the ability to open those doors in your mind to go into rooms that we are great at closing and never reopening.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And you just said something that I think is one of the, and I don't want to call it a negative, but it's a commonality. Many of us who come into these careers, veteran first responder, we come in with a lot of trauma at the front door.
Yeah.
You know, and then we just pile it on for 20 or 30 years.
Right.
So push the ego aside, really take a look at yourself in the mirror, even if you don't think, and you said it perfect. I didn't feel depressed.
Yeah.
Even now, you're like, I didn't see myself that way.
Mm-hmm. And being medical too, right? Like, I was like, I'm the subject matter expert. I would know, right? So it was
that's the worst person to be.
We're the worst. Yeah.
Because you overanalyze it. You think you try to logic your way to an answer.
Yep. Yeah. Everything's perfect.
Walk me into your nonprofit space and what's your vision and how's that growing?
Okay. So it's growing perfectly. You'll hear me say the word. Because it's on its like fifth version of what it is. And that's because, you know, I'm continuously growing as well.
What is the grind? It's not just a routine, but the decision we make to wake up, give everything we've got, then find a way to go further. Grind, spelled GRND, is more than a brand. It's a movement, an emotion we all feel connected to as we work daily to pursue our goals and support each other. Founded by a former Army Ranger, Grind Activewear has a clear mission to give 100% and then some more in sport, fitness, and in life. Functional, high-quality performance wear that's rooted in American culture because you demand gear that outworks the rest. Whether you're on the field, in the gym, or building your own lane. Grind is for those who refuse to settle. Go check out thegrindcollective.com and tap into something bigger than clothing. And while you're there, use the promo code TRANSITION15 to get 15% off your purchase. You're likely already on the grind. Maybe you just don't realize it yet, but the grind continues.
The goal for me was in realizing how much healing took place for me in Guatemala, in Costa Rica, and then Mexico. I mean, only I know what I'm talking about when it comes to me, but I wouldn't be me without those trips, without that time away from everything, to be completely disassociated, unplugged from the phone, unplugged from responsibility, and just there, to just be in safe space. And so because of what that did for me, I'm like, well, if I was the doc who didn't feel depressed, didn't know I was having an issue, all these things, and it took this for me, there's got to be other people going through the same thing. And how do I build that experience for others? And so, it started looking like surfing first, because for me, surfing, we've already talked about, it's huge. You want to get into the woo-woo stuff, right? Like, it's nature, it's water, the vibrations that whales and dolphins put out, right? Like the signals that they send out, there's potential healing in that. There's so much that comes with being in the ocean, the oneness, the time to yourself and your thoughts. But so
even boiling it down to a more basic thing, how do you bring people together to try to help them under the guise of making surfing a component of it if surfing's not you?
So the surfing piece,
and I say that rhetorically almost.
Yeah, no. And which helps to the time it's taken to get us where we are, because it was going to be namaste and surf, pure and simple. But exactly like you said, what if you don't surf? Surfing's not your thing, which is why I've shifted to namaste and, because the namaste piece of the nonprofit is bringing you back to yourself, right? That's just, let's quiet the mind, quiet all the stress. Here's a couple tools, whether it's meditation, kundalini, breath work, yoga. Here's some tools to just help you quiet things down, tap in to, the energy that we have within. And then the and piece is, how are you going to integrate afterwards? What are you going to do now that you've slowed down all the loud noises and the depression and the anxiety and the crippling whatever it is that we're dealing with? What are you going to do? Because if you just stay inside in your couch, you're going to go right back to that place. You have to be in nature some way, shape, or form. You've got to have community. You've got to have purpose. And so the overall umbrella is namaste and, with the purpose of bringing you back to yourself and then integrating into nature in some way, shape, or form. Surfing is going to be one that I lean heavily on because that's been my methodology, right? I didn't do yoga. I did do for probably 20 years now because of all my back injuries, fractured T10, compressed C5, 6, and 7, torn supra and infraspinatus, no ACL, broken.
So the military did jack you up.
Yeah. So before yoga, I was on Valium, Mobic, and Percocet 3 times a day, minus the Mobic, 3 times a day for 5 years. And I started running the fitness enhancement program for people who had gotten out of standards. And in doing that, I took them to a yoga class because I didn't want to break them, make sure everybody's stretched and doing the right thing. And all of a sudden, after like a couple months, I went to take my pills in the morning and I didn't need them anymore because I'd been doing the yoga with these guys once a week.
What was the most significant incident, injury that you experienced?
Oh, probably, motorcycle crash. That was not a good one. But
that'll do it to you.
Yeah, totaled the motorcycle, picked it up from the impound lot, and the guy literally by the looks of the bike, he was like, "I'm so sorry for your loss." And I was like, "Is it that bad?" He's like, "I mean, yeah, but the guy who was driving it." And I was like, "No, that's me." He's like, "What? How are you alive?" That's kind of the end of my motorcycle days too.
Any significant incident, injury as directly a result of deployment or military?
Just overall wear and tear. My ACL blew out probably 4 years ago. Complete rupture, and I think, the way I see it is kind of like a truck and an axle. Right? You drive a brand new truck to work every day and run over a giant pothole, and it's going to handle it like a boss for a long time
Until it doesn't.
until one day blows the strut or whatever. And I ran hard, all of it, as much as I could do. Not all the forced marches and stuff. Like, I was running the groups, trying to motivate people, being the road guard, carrying people's weight, pushing people, pulling packs. I put my body through as much as I possibly could, and then went to dive schools at 35 with a bunch of 18-year-old studs.
That sounds like it would just be a walk in the park.
It's mentally, it is, right? Because if you know that there's nothing anybody can do to deter you, then yeah, you just got to show up. And really the biggest fear I had was my body giving out. I knew there was nothing that they could do to make me say, all right, I'm out, right? I'm 35. I've been in the real military. I've seen combat. I've been in horrible commands. I know what this lifestyle looks like, and it's worth it. And I'll do whatever it takes to get there. But yeah, I was a little worried about, all the speed bumps that I've hit along the way, because, I had
full speed.
Yeah. I had a buddy, I think he was a CB about my age, and stud, crushing it. And one day I see him down in the office and ruptured some tendon, and that was it. Or you get heat exhaustion and body didn't recover well. And so I was trying to fly. That was the only school I've ever gone to that I was not boisterously loud, like, "Oh, you can't hurt me," because they had the video. They were trying to kick me out. I was like,
"Let me disappear."
Yeah, which was impossible because I was older than the instructors, wearing more ribbons and chest candy than all of them. That I was not hidden.
My one last thing with you being in the military, and then we'll go back to your nonprofit. You were assigned to SEAL Team SDV out of Hawaii, correct?
Yes.
Did you ever actually go out in one of the SDVs, and what was the longest trip you ever took in one of those?
So I never got in the SDV. I was always on the surface. Their longest dive, I want to say it was 8 to 12 hours. The first thing I wanted to say was 16 for some of our workup stuff, but it's probably, I don't think any of that information is. But yeah, no, never real life stuff. I did get to go out on the sub, a real sub, where, we can do a little workup stuff, but you don't know what's going on in there. You're just in a bubble. What's going on? Is it time to eat again?
It's a closed little world.
Yeah, it is.
So back to your nonprofit, what's the iteration you're at right now, and where's the next step going to be for it?
So where we're at right now is I finally got a partner, which is Jackie. And I think that was one of the things I really needed. It's great to have a good idea. It stinks to do it by yourself. And I think with her energy and my energy and our backgrounds, I think things are going to take off really quick now. The initial focus was going to be to just look for funding for our first retreat, which we're looking to host in Costa Rica. But I'm going to shift a few different possibilities of our direction. I plan on hosting a campaign because I was thinking a lot of people get retreats paid for, veteran wise, but it's like a never ending requirement of money, right? And it's $5,000 to $10,000 per person. And that's just not always easy to produce. I was just supposed to go on a retreat that this guy was, his name's Ocean Eagle. He's an activation breathwork facilitator. And he was going to pay for me to come out to Mexico for an activation breathwork retreat. Couldn't find the funding. And so I thought about, well, what if we can get enough money to buy property and build a health and or a healing center, and then run those retreats for free for veterans forever. And then on top of that, take that property and it can also bring in, it's a self-licking ice cream cone, right? And so I'm at the point where I think that is where I'm going to start, is build this campaign for, this is our big picture. We want 5 locations in 5 different countries where veterans can go to heal for free forever and always, right? Obviously, availability, it can't just be open door, but the best we can, where the students that we have who come can also go into a teacher training where we teach them to teach, and then they can stay and work there as their payment. So we're completely self-fulfilling instructors. We rent out the space. It brings in more money. So then we can buy the second property, host the second location, and then the more properties and locations that we open up, the more veterans are like, dude, I'm at my ends rope here and I don't know what to do. Hey, we got a spot down in Nicaragua. Here's a plane ticket. Go hang out there for 5 days, and maybe we can give you some tools that you bring back home. If not the tools alone, the community, bringing people together, getting into the activities of what we would do in the retreats, whether it be surfing. I'm huge on these electric skateboards right now. I got into the electric skateboarding because of my sickness and not having any energy to where I couldn't surf anymore. I tried to paddle out. Something went wrong with my vision. I couldn't see in the sun, and I was eyes closed, just getting beat up by waves, feeling like I was going to be sick. So I couldn't surf. I didn't really surf for about a year and a half. I went to a shop in Oceanside called Evolve and asked to demo one of these electric skateboards. And I felt like I was surfing the road. There's a lot of skateboards that you can surf skate with that feel really good. But this one was generating its own speed. And so now I'm surfing for miles down the road. And that was another huge piece. And I can't believe I forgot about that. That was a part of my healing journey, because I got that and a golden retriever by the time, I got back. And so I'm outside riding this thing, exploring the world. I could pull up to, a 5-mile dirt trail that I would have never dreamed of walking it because I was just not in that place. And now I could throw this board down off-road, go just cruise around the whole 5-mile thing, see the birds, nature, plants, animals. The healing happens, automatically. In fact, I just was working with this retired special operations Army guy who just did an Ibogaine, 5-MeO DMT, and then this MERT therapy down in Cardiff. I want to say it's magnetic mind remapping. But he wanted to surf, never surfed before. I got connected through him through the Pendleton Surf Club, saying, "Hey, Brandon, this sounds like a guy perfect for you." And when I told him about surfing and the limited time he had here, because he lives in Vegas, I brought him the electric skateboard. He fell in love. He's 62 years old, doing 14 miles a day on it. Bought his wife one, who's also, older. Now they're both out there cruising the world. Quickly got a community of people where they're all together, and now they're in group chats, setting up their own group rides aside from me. And so that's where we're at is we have the big picture, the big mission, the first full flagship campaign of building and running retreats out of Costa Rica first, because I have such a network of people and community down there from my friends that are already living there. And then just do what we can, right? Like going back to what I said in the beginning, be a lighthouse. As long as I'm being a lighthouse, helping others to be their own lighthouse and taking care of themselves and focusing on being here and the now and the present and having community that we can reach out to at any time. I mean, there's so many veteran organizations, veteran retreat organizations. That's the other piece that I hope to do with ours is once we have these locations established, then the other veterans who are running retreats can have a location where they go without having to pay or severely discounted to change things up and give people, a little bit more than just their backyard and seeing the world, because it's so eye-opening.
I definitely think that's the future of a lot of these groups is there's so many veterans and former first responders coming into this similar type space that I think that's the inevitable next step of the joint collaboration. Go back to your story of when you first started, doing social media posting, and all of a sudden doing it, you were introduced to other people, and then it grows.
Right.
And it's that symbiotic relationship where, hey, I've got this piece, you've got this piece. We don't necessarily have to partner as one organization, but we can mutually share.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think bringing everyone together, that's kind of the goal. I mean, in one way, shape, or form, bringing you back to yourself and then bringing everyone together. Because we are brothers and sisters and family. It's so interesting, and I'm sure it's the same thing with, the police force. You meet somebody, and as soon as you guys share that piece of information that is bond, oh, do you know this person and that person? And so it's like doing things alone, you can do it when it's time, right? There's definitely a time to be alone and to do the inner work in, the cocoon phase of our metamorphosis. But I think, once we do that work and, we spend some time in here working through the things we need to work through and compiling a path and a direction to go forward, then it's the community, bringing people together, having someone that you can reach out to and can reach out to you. It's so huge.
The one piece that the bridge we need to get across, though, and you mentioned it already, you were getting the phone calls.
Yeah.
Hey, are you good? Hey, are you good? And you were, yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Yeah.
We've got to get better at when we're not fine, telling our friends, telling our family
Right.
when they're reaching out, hey, I'm struggling. I'm hurting. I need some help.
Yeah, that part's tough. And really, I don't know. I can't think of like the one line fixer for that. It's just trusting the process, trusting ourselves, being around supportive people and knowing that we have supportive people, which I do think that is the one thing that this retreat space brings in is supportive people who really want to be like, dude, I know you've been through it. I've been through it too. So just, I'm here, man. Like, and as we tell our story, right, then that potentially inspires others to like, man, that guy went through something just like what I went through. And I didn't think I was going to come out of it, but look, he's got hope. And I think that, when I went to the ayahuasca retreat and we had a huge community sharing circle, right? When it started, I was like, I'm not going to say anything. What am I going to say? I'm here to see if ayahuasca is a real thing and maybe it will cure my stomach, And then as the circle continued and people really bared their soul and were vulnerable and just committed to being in that container, it just popped everybody's top off, right? Like after that, everyone was diving deep, and I said things that I had never even thought about. And so I think that's the answer, is bringing you around people that make you feel safe, because someone calling saying, "Hey, are you all right?" Yeah, cool, fine. All right, man, just checking. Talk to you next month. Click. That's easy. Yeah, not right now, dude. I don't have the time. I don't want to talk about it.
I think we've got maybe one more generation to go. You're still dealing with, so I'll put my era, I've probably got at least 10 years on you.
52?
56.
Ooh, all right.
And so you've got my generation. Your generation, maybe you started seeing a little bit more near the tail end of your career of it's okay to admit that you're struggling and there's no stigma to it or anything.
Right.
But for the most part, we still spent the majority of our career of keep your mouth shut, do your job, move on. It's going to be, I think, at least one more generation where they spend their entire career from the time they walked into the door till the time they leave, being at least more exposed and open to, if I'm struggling, I'm going to say something.
Yeah, I agree. We'll probably be a pendulum swing too. We'll go from nobody saying anything. Everybody's complaining about everything. All right, let's meet in the middle here. But yeah, I agree. I think society as a whole has to go in ebbs and flows, right? There's always going to be a catastrophic time and then a high time followed by a catastrophic time. And yeah, it's all perfect.
Is your advice for somebody, well, let me take it backwards. If somebody's struggling, what would you say are some of the telltale signs in the sense of maybe you should really consider an ayahuasca or am I going too stretched on that?
No, it's just that's a very big question. I left ayahuasca thinking everybody needed to do it. I'm now in the belief that you'll be wherever you're supposed to be and do whatever you're supposed to do. And I wouldn't try to force anything. I wouldn't be like, look at my life and go, whoa, I need to go do ayahuasca. If you're supposed to find your way into any form of plant medicine, it will find you. And I think the reason for not going steam forward into just, and whoever is going to go straight ahead is supposed to, but I think that it loosens that fabric so much that where are you in your life, right? What's going on with your family? What's going on with your job? What's going on with all things? I was fortunate enough to be able to just say, I'm out. I'm tapping out of everything for 2 years. Nobody can tell me what to do, where to be, where to go. I'm going to do whatever. And which meant reflection, right? I bought a big giant Sprinter and drove cross country a couple times, lots of meditation, India time, all of it.
Meditation gets thrown around a lot. For you, what's your meditation process?
Well, I think that's not a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? It's kind of like deli sandwiches, in the sense that you can do so many forms of, and I think to isolate it down to just one thing is just because you're still would be learning, right? But what meditation and my summary is as we go through life, this is a perfect room for the example, right? Something pops up and we write it on a sticky note and we put it on the wall, and then more things. And we just have all these sticky notes all over the place of things that we haven't resolved or worked on or thought through. And so what we need to do is clear out this room of all that drama, right? A lot of stuff in here that we've put in this room, it serves no purpose. Holding on to the dead cat when we were 11, right? Like, we don't need to, we can get rid of that one. So now, what is the biggest question is, how do I get you into your room of sticky notes? And maybe that means you go exercise as hard as you possibly can. And when you're completely exhausted and you're just barely able to breathe, you sit down and you start working on your breath and connecting to whatever it is that you want to connect to, whether it's your mind, your heart, or maybe you just do a little bit of stretching, make sure your body doesn't hurt in one way or another, lay down, kind of the same thing, walk yourself through that process. Or there's active meditation, which is what I think I do mostly, which is, when you're washing the dishes and you're not thinking about washing the dishes, you're thinking about the stuff you're supposed to be thinking about. And I think the biggest thing with meditation is thinking that it's supposed to be a quiet space. That's the goal at the end of mastery, right? When we first tap into meditation, everything's going to pop up. You're going to be thinking of every thought you can ever think of, or as many thoughts as you could think of it. And the goal, I would say, is to, whatever your methodology is, whether it's, you could even be meditating while you're watching TV, meditating while you're walking, meditating while you're surfing or painting or taking care of, your kid's diaper.
I don't mean to laugh at that, but I'm picturing a guy sitting on the couch with the TV on and his wife's going, "You're not listening to me. Honey, I was meditating."
actively meditating. And so I think, I do really like the full-on meditative posture where you're just really dedicated, because I feel like it's like sitting down to take a test, right? You're focused on just that and nothing else. And we've got some big work to do here. Or maybe we don't have big work. Maybe we just see what pops up. What big sticky note is going to come to me today? And maybe I don't need to know what that sticky note means, but the fact that it came to me first means that it's something I need to investigate a little bit more. Why is that the first thing that I thought about? And maybe that's all you need to do. You just get that one little thought, meditation's done. Took you 30 seconds, right? Now go and walk and watch TV and think, well, why did I think about that?
Along those lines, is journaling a component for you?
Not for me. I can't write very fast as my brain thinks.
What about just, hey, this has come to my mind. Maybe I've got 900 things going right now. I can't meditate, so I want to make sure, but I revisit this. Or
I do meditative audios. So where I'll get into a meditative state, planning on this, and then just hit record. And then just do my thing, and if I feel like talking, I'll start talking, and then go back and listen to it, and then that's where I'll journal afterwards, like make my notes of, all right, yeah, that came up, and that came up, and that came up, and then you could even assign dates and tasks and organize it all. All right, we're going to get rid of this one. So yeah, I'd say it's the collection of I like efficiency, right? So either I can go to the gym and I can go visit my partner, I can go stretch, and I can go do all these things. I can go out in nature for a nature walk, or I can just go surf for an hour. So I like the idea of compacting it all into one. And yeah.
Along the lines of the cool stuff, because I am a wannabe surfer. It's like one of those things that I want to get back into doing. I just haven't made it the priority yet. But for you, where has been the best place you've surfed, and where's still on your bucket list to surf?
Bonsai Pipeline. I was dedicated 4 years of living in Oahu to surfing it as big as I possibly could. I got a video of me getting wrecked on a pretty good wave there. So that was my pinnacle, right? That's because when you paddle out at Pipeline, I would equate it to walking out on the field during Super Bowl, right? You are sitting in the lineup with the world's best. Obvious Kelly Slater face, like sitting right there in the lineup. Jamie O'Brien, you're just like, wow, I'm right here sitting right next to these people in these waves that want to swallow me. First time I looked down one of these big waves of pipeline, it looked like you could fit like a huge tour bus just right down the middle of it. Just like you feel it, you hear it. So that was my pinnacle of surfing.
Are you a historian of surfing? And why, the reason why I asked that is, I wonder if the first person who ever saw pipeline from a surfer's perspective, were they an average person who went aboard, me, try to stand up on that? Or was it, hey, I'm a surfer, look at that? You know, being able to go back to the first time somebody actually looked at it that way.
So go back, I'm not very much into history, but I do know. So going back to the beginning, you know, it was just villagers looking at these things coming to the beach, and someone said, let's cut down a tree and see if we can get that to float on that wave. And so instead of surfing, it was called wave sliders, was the first term for what they were doing, because they were trying to slide down that wave out there. So I guess to answer your question, no, because there wasn't such of a thing, right? It's basically been one guy or a couple people saying, let's go mess around with that and see if it's any fun. And then other people going, whoa. And then other people going, how do we make that better and more performance? And
the thing that to me that I think is crazy are the people who chase the really big waves, the ones where you're like getting pulled out on a jet ski and stuff.
Yeah, I like the idea of that, but today
you don't want to fall 70 stories off your.
Well, you can have a vest that auto inflates, you know. And some buddies I had in Hawaii that were big wave surfing, that's what they did. You know, they had an impact vest and specific board and a jet ski crew or person that was there to rescue them. And I feel like under those conditions, that's
relatively safe.
That's better than normal, right? Like if I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the statistics of pipeline injuries are more on the smaller waves, because when you have smaller waves closer to shore, you can have very little water between you and the reef. I think one of the first times I surfed it, like it was like 2 feet, very, very shallow. Whereas if you have big waves, it's breaking way, way out. So now there's less chance of you hitting the bottom and getting knocked unconscious. You just have to be able to hold your breath for a little bit longer and pop that inflation. I will tell you this too. I've caught some good waves with some size. And this was a big eye opener. I got held down, and I would have bet you a paycheck that it was 45 seconds that I was held down. But I had my GoPro mouth mount, and so when I got home, I watched the video. It was 15 seconds. And so that kind of opened my eyes to like start counting. How much time are you really down there? Because it feels like forever, and you're fighting, which is burning off oxygen. And then you pop up and there's another wave coming. But the thing they teach you in dive school, right? You just got to go limp, hold your breath, just relax and wait for it to be over. And so when I started doing that, I mean, even you can go watch it. I want to say Kai Lenny surfing Nazaré, some 100-foot wave, and he gets wiped out. And he's like, come watch me get wiped out on my GoPro. And if you count, it's like 14 seconds for 100-foot wave. So, you know, it's all mental.
That's a big piece of mental.
It's a big piece of mental.
And my other part of that question, do you still have a bucket list location you want to surf?
Now, really, no. Jackie and I were going to check out a retreat location in the Maldives here in September. So, you know, it's kind of on the list, but I wouldn't say I have a bucket list, because I'm just so content and happy with everything that's happened this far, that now where I'm at is just like whatever blows my way. You know, the Maldives trip with Jackie, never even thought about it. And she called me and she's like, hey, I think we should do a little recon over there, and this could be another retreat spot. Let's do it.
There's something to be said, though, to get to that point in your life that where I'm surfing right now is the best waves I want to surf.
Yeah. Getting away from California cold water would be the preference. But the beauty of this experience for me in surfing was I was a wild child. I was a wild service member. And so I was a shortboarding little grommet, just out there trying to rip as hard as I could. Hated longboarding, hated longboarders. Didn't want anything to do with, those guys that can just paddle circles around me. My sickness took surfing away from me, and that couldn't happen. So I started longboarding to just be able to at least be in the water. And what I found was, man, it is so fun to just get out, because, it's totally different for me. I've been my feet planted in one spot, on this little board and moving as fast as you can. And now it's like, just try to stay on the wave as long as you can. Who cares how you look? And so really now I've found to have enjoyment in really anything, all conditions, whether it's the best conditions or the worst conditions. In fact, the worst days in my surfing career today are the best days, because the best days bring everybody else out of the water or out of the woodwork, right? So now you've got all the pros out in the water, all the kids who are homeschooled in the water, all the guys and girls who aren't working. It's packed. Whereas if you go on a 1 to 2 foot day, nobody's there. And you get to catch 100 million waves and have the time of your life. I've got my golden retriever has been out surfing with me now. And so it really helped to get a new lease on the sport or the hobby, the lifestyle, because I had lost focus of why I started surfing in the first place, which was just because it was fun and it felt good and it was cool to slide down a wave and try to chase down the line. But then all of a sudden it became, I need to do this one maneuver. It's got to be this wave. I'm trying to get barreled, and it's got to be here. Didn't get that one. Closed out. Those people are, and you just end up being more frustrated, which if you're out there surfing and you're frustrated, you gotta reflect on how life is going for you at the moment, because it's probably a little stressful. So place to be is wherever you're at and making the best of it.
Namaste. And you've mentioned being a social media poster in the past, but is there a social media presence to it yet?
Not yet. I took my previous social media accounts and I converted them to the Namaste and Surf. I think Namaste and might be taken in Instagram, so I'll have to play around with the terminology of that. But the Namaste and piece isn't really what I want to go for the full advertisement. The Namaste and is the umbrella. And then now it's, who are we going to appeal to? So if I'm talking to you and a group of your friends, and let's say your thing is mountain biking, right? I'm coming to you with Namaste and mountain bike.
Got it.
And we are going to go here. We're going to do this, that, and the other. We're going to have the community. We're going to have the tools. We're going to do the holistic stuff. We're going to go burn these trails down. We're going to have the time of your life. And then when you want to go find some more stuff about Namaste and mountain bike, it's going to be under that tab of the umbrella.
Got it.
And so then the kind of cool thing is, being it all under the one Namaste and umbrella, is you can then see all the different communities that we're involved in. And it's going to be beautiful to build, because it's going to be built by us, for us. And then the one thing, I never thought I was going to be veteran specific, which I'm not, to clarify. I think we're all going through this journey, and it's not easy for anyone. And I think that everyone could use some support. And this type of support is not usually affordable to all the people who need it. And so my big vision is that this is to bring everybody together, right? And it's to allow the different communities of people to find themselves and their community, whether it be veterans, police officers, first responders, nurses, battered, domestic violence victims. It could be children, right? The possibility is endless, and I really don't want to limit it. I think that's part of the 2 years that it's taken to get here, is realizing that I probably got to start somewhere with a group of people. But I mean, my vision and feeling is that it's anybody, that we don't turn anybody away, because I feel like a lot of the civilians that I have met in the world, sure, they didn't join the military, they didn't go to war, they didn't get shot at or see somebody killed, but holy cow, did they go through it in their own way, shape, or form, being a civilian and living life here in the United States. My brother has seen more combat as a civilian in South Florida than a large portion of the military. And so to think, that the military and veterans and first responders are the only ones who need it. We all need a hug, So
to wrap this up, to pull you back to the veteran specific space,
okay.
I like to end with giving the guest any final pieces of advice that you would throw out from your experience along the lines of the transition component of getting out and getting back into civilian world and getting your feet back on the ground again.
I would say that there are so many resources available. Being part of Naval Special Warfare did open more doors, because as I was transitioning out, talking to other service members who had just gone through like TAPS, got the basic, everybody gets this brief, they had no clue all the things that I had been told from our NSW specific transition seminar. And when you start looking, I mean, there's an organization for everything. There's an organization to help veterans transition from medicine into tech, from women starting their own company, entrepreneurship, service member stuff. So I would say that my one thing I would advise is just Google, maybe even ChatGPT, to be honest, because that's compiling all the things. What are all the veteran things out there, and just start networking? Because number one, you jump off the wheel from that machine spinning so fast that now it's like, what do I do with all this energy? I've got this drive and determination and leadership, and I need to put it on somebody. And just sitting at home, from my own personal experience, as well as some of my other close friends who got out when I did, we went through kind of the same thing. Idle time is not good. It's probably the worst thing. So just looking for everything, signing up for, maybe Honor Foundation, getting into college, doing the VRNE, even the simple thing that I did, which was really easy, was I went to the hospital at Balboa and asked if I can OJT, job shadow. I was surprised at how quickly they were like, yeah, come on in. Here's some scrubs. Go hang out. What do you want to do? To where that felt so good to still be a little bit in the community, right? Still be around a bunch of corpsmen and medicine and patients. And then going, some of these different networking events where I can't think of any off the top of my head, and I think a lot of them did get shut down. Funding was lost, but there's so many out there. And I would say, look up everything in your local area, go to, the Veterans Business Center, and just see what it's like. If you've ever seen the movie Yes Man, it's Jim Carrey.
Oh, yes.
And he has to say yes to everything. And he just pulls that tab and that tab and that tab. Yes, I will. Yes, I would. Okay. I'd say if you just, in your transition, just become a yes man and just go to every meeting, meet every person, get on LinkedIn and whatever job field you're interested in, look up those companies, write people asking for informational interviews. That literally got me. I wrote someone had nothing to do with me. I think he was a veteran, had been out for some time. But I said, hey, I'm trying to get into med device. What can you tell me? And he's like, get over here. And he had me operating a robotic surgery machine, like suturing with these robot arms, just from one email. That really, the doors started flying open. And, the sky's the limit when we get out. We've been prepared to be professionals in this environment. It's just a matter of pulling everybody together and organizing it and, pointing your rifle in whatever direction and executing. But I think, just reach out to everybody, every company, every volunteer, and just be active, and then let the universe bring you what I think it will, which we don't know what that is, and everything that you get brought is perfect because you get to learn either you love it or you didn't love it and you learn something else about yourself in that. So can't do anything wrong except sit at home and do nothing. And even then that's good for a short period of time. So, yeah.
Well, I thank you for sharing your time, sharing your story, and I wish you all the best going forward.
Of course. Thank you so much as well. Appreciate your time.
As always, thank you for listening or watching the episode. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to reach out on social media or send me an email. The links are all in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you. Also, if you're not already, please follow the podcast on whatever platform you get your podcasts. You can also subscribe on YouTube. And if you would, please leave me a rating. Ratings do two things. You can tell me what I need to fix or improve, and the more ratings also gets the podcast recommended to more people. Another ask, please share the podcast with anyone you think could benefit from and enjoy it. And last, don't forget, sign up for the newsletter.